What was the culture like around injury and recovery back then? Were there expectations for you to sort of tough it out if you ever got injured?
Well, it was mostly tough it out. Well, I was playing in New York, and I rounded second, and I turned to go back to second base, and I snapped my knee. I had a broken kneecap and didn't know it. We weren't allowed to lift weights.
Sorry, repeat that. You weren't able to lift weights.
No, our general manager, if he thought you were lifting weights, they would trade you.
Welcome to Health is Wealth, where we explore the intersection of athletic excellence and personal well-being. I'm Dr. Myron Rolle. Today, I'm incredibly honored to welcome a true baseball legend, a man who not only carved out an incredible career on the diamond, but also champions health awareness off of it, Mr. Ken Griffey Sr. From his World Series titles with the Big Red Machine, to his All-Star appearances, from his Gold Glove awards, to his famous son, known simply as Junior. Ken Griffey Sr.'s impact on baseball is undeniable. But beyond the accolades, he's also been a powerful voice, sharing his personal journey with prostate cancer and encouraging men to prioritize their health. Before we welcome him to the show, let's learn a little bit more about a Baseball Hall of Famer, Ken Griffey Sr.
But first, a message from our sponsor.
What do you do when things get tough? You don't give up. You stand your ground. If you've been diagnosed with metastatic prostate cancer and have tried hormone therapy, ask your doctor about Pluvicto. Pluvicto is not chemotherapy. It's a different treatment that targets PSMA-positive cells. It's now FDA approved after one hormone therapy and before chemotherapy. Pluvicto involves contact with radioactivity, which may increase the risk for cancer and cause fetal harm. Drink plenty of fluids, urinate often, use contraception, and talk to your doctor about ways to reduce the risk of exposing others to radiation during and after treatment. Pluvicto can cause low levels of blood cell counts, kidney problems, and infertility. Tell your doctor if you have weakness, pale skin, shortness of breath, bleeding or bruising more easily, an infection, or changes in urination. Side effects include decreased blood cell counts, tiredness, dry mouth, nausea, appetite loss, joint or back pain, and constipation. Ask your doctor about Pluvicto, because every day without cancer progression is a victory.
My name is actually George Kenneth Griffey Sr. Everybody calls me Ken. I'm the original. Baseball was the last sport, I played football, basketball, and I ran track. During the time in high school, I'd run track. They'd have a track meet, and we'd have a baseball game the same day. When I wasn't hitting, I'd have to go up and high jump, broad jump, and run the 220 or whatever it was, and then I'd go back down and I'd play center field where I'd hit. But baseball was just a hobby. It wasn't anything that I was really serious about when I was coming through. The biggest thing was getting the opportunity to play. Because I know being the 29th round draft choice, I couldn't make any mistakes. First year I hit 289, I led the rookie league team in hitting. The next year I went to Sioux Falls, South Dakota. And my wife, Junior, and myself were the only black family in the whole city. And I could not hit below 300. I knew that. So I hit 342, 318, and 327. I got a shot at the big leagues. I have 3 or 4 uncles that passed with prostate cancer. And during the time I was growing up, like I said, my mother raised 5 boys and 1 girl. So all the boys, we got with age, a little older, 25, 26, she would remind us, make sure when you get a little older, make sure you get your prostate checked. So when I got 30, 35, 40 up in those days, I always made sure when I got the physical that I got all that checked. My mother had made sure we understood what that was because she had lost 4 brothers that way. She wanted to make sure we understood we needed to get checked.
So that could have saved your life.
It probably did save my life, that I was very vigilant about it. The biggest thing about prostate cancer, if you catch it early, you got a chance to have a very good life. We're trying to spread the word, to have men talk to their doctors if they're having any problems. The biggest thing is just no one will talk about it.
Welcome, Mr. Griffey. How are you?
I'm doing fine, doing fine.
Wonderful. Glad to have you here.
I'm glad to be here.
It's an honor. It is an honor.
Talk about when you talk about prostate, yeah.
Yes, sir.
It was a journey for me for a while.
Yeah. No, I really appreciate it. I want to start with your early life and your playing career. Can you take us back to your early days, and what role did sports play in your childhood, and how did that shape your path to the majors?
Well, sports was a big role. I started playing baseball, football, basketball, run track at 11. Then went to the high school level. But baseball, sports in particular was always in my life. My mother was a basketball player out of Kentucky. My dad was a football player he went to Kentucky State, so he was a football player. But it was always in my life in terms of baseball and sports, period.
And so if you think about talent identification, sort of scouting and sort of realizing who was a good player or not. Nowadays, right, you have social media, you have scouts, you have a lot of video outs to recruit players on where they want to go. It's a little bit more vague back in your time, but when did you get the sense that you were built a little different, that you had it?
Well, the biggest thing was when I was more of a football player, a wide receiver, and I was getting all the accolades in terms of what school to go to, colleges. And baseball was like, because I didn't play it that much. I played high school ball, but in high school, we had a 10-game schedule. And if it looked like it was going to rain, they was going to call the game. So I think over 4 years of high school ball, which was like 40 games, I think we played 20, wow, if that, because of scheduling, Baseball was not really into my life in terms of how I was thinking. I had tryouts with Pittsburgh, the Pirates, and the reason why I got into baseball, I had a guy, he was a scout, his name was Elmer Gray. And Elmer Gray was a refereed all my football games and my basketball games. But he wanted to find out about baseball, so he asked me to come and try out for the Reds. And I think I had 2 tryouts with the Reds at that time. And both times I had to face Doc Medich, who was a pitcher for Pittsburgh. But at that time, he was a college pitcher out of the University of Pittsburgh. And everyone knew he was going to go like number 1 in the draft. And I beat him up pretty good. So, but I never thought about, playing baseball until Elmer said, if we draft you, would you sign? And I was having a lot of problems with schools because I couldn't find any of my football tapes, to show schools, my tapes, and they disappeared somehow all of a sudden. I said, if you draft me, I'll sign. So I didn't know I was going to be the last person drafted. Gullett was the number 1 draft choice, and I was the 29th round draft choice. And out of that draft, only 3 of us that made it. Wow. Gullett, Eastwick, and me.
Let me ask you a question on your baseball career. Tell me about the culture. What was the culture like around injury and recovery back then? Were there expectations for you to sort of tough it out if you ever got injured?
Well, it was mostly tough it out.
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. I was playing in Philadelphia, or actually New York, and I rounded second, and I turned to go back to second base,
okay,
and I snapped my knee. So I had a broken kneecap and didn't know it. I just thought it was something, it was go away. I played on it for 6 weeks. I put a little rubber sleeve on my leg, and I played on it for 6 weeks. I had to get my average up.
Right.
I was an outfielder, which was good, but I didn't hit very many home runs, and I had to have a high average because I was getting ready to go free agent. It was last year on my contract. I said, nobody's going to pick me up if I hit 270, 285 and being, an outfielder.
Right.
If I'm not hitting for home runs or driving in runs, you're not going to get picked. So I said, I got to work on something to get myself back. So what I did was, at that time, you had to take some painkillers.
Oh boy. Oh boy.
So I was taking Darvon.
Oh man.
So I had to take 3 Darvon a day.
Yeah.
I did that for 6 weeks.
Yeah.
I got my average up to 330. And then turn around, I was playing the week before, I was playing against the Braves.
Okay.
And I hit Phil Negro pretty good, the knuckleballer.
Yeah.
So I hit a home run off of him to win the game.
Nice.
The next week he's in Cincinnati, and he unintentionally walked me 3 times. I'd never been walked 3 times in my whole career,
Yeah.
He would not let me, swing the bat.
Yeah.
So at that time, about 2 or 3 days before, I stopped taking the Darvon. And it wasn't good. So I had told McNamara, John McNamara, our manager, I said, John, I can't play anymore. I said, it's a little much, So he said, well, it's your decision. I said, okay. I didn't play anymore. The next day I was in LA, I had surgery. All they did was cut it open, clean it out, put 2 butterfly Band-Aids on it, wrapped it up, and said, don't put your foot on the ground for 6 weeks.
Wow. That's a dangerous, potentially slippery slope. And frankly, I'm glad that you drew the line and said, I need surgery to fix this thing, right? Not just mask the symptoms, but actually get this thing taken care of.
I had to get it done, yeah. After I had the surgery in August, and I was done for the year.
Yeah.
Came to spring training, and Larry Starr was our trainer. Well, he ordered this Cybex machine.
Oh, yeah.
And that was the first time everybody knew about the Cybex.
Yeah.
And we were on that Cybex machine every day. And that thing kept me on the field and I wasn't limping or none of that. In that same year, we're in LA, All-Star, 1980 All-Star game. And I wasn't playing. And the Dodgers had just lost Tommy Johns. He went to the Yankees. And then all of a sudden, they're bringing Tommy Johns in the game. And Lasorda told Chuck, he said, Chuck, you better put Griffey in. He said, okay, Griff, you go. I went pinch. Now, that's the first time I think Dave Kingman has ever pinched hit for.
Right.
I pinched hit a home run, and ended up being the MVP of the 1980 All-Star.
There you go.
And I just kept on going from there. But I stayed on that Cybex machine.
Yeah.
I was on that. Matter of fact, I ordered one, put it in the house. I had it for 10 years, so it kept me going.
Definitely.
Through a whole lot of changes. That Cybex machine, I can say, was one of the better machines.
Look, one thing about athletes, I know it and you know it as well. When we find a routine or something that works,
You stick with it.
we stick with that thing.
You stick with it.
Absolutely. I wanted to talk to you about chewing tobacco, because that's a part of the baseball culture in the past. How did habits like that reflect the overall attitude towards health in baseball during your career?
I didn't do it. I mean, I just, the closest thing I came to chewing was gum. And sometimes gum would, I'd bite my tongue on it, if I was playing. So.
Right.
But I just never understood those guys with the chewing tobacco.
Yeah.
And a lot of them, they do all kind of stuff with it. They'll put alcohol in it. I guess, to me, I think it relaxes some of them. My youngest son, he liked it. Right. He enjoyed when he played with the Reds and Mariners, he liked chewing.
Yeah.
I just didn't understand what it was about.
I want to tell you how much that sort of influenced culture, because I remember growing up and seeing guys in the majors have that big wad of chew, and then I would go home and tell my mother, give me a bunch of bubble gum so I could put it in my mouth and act like I'm chewing like my favorite players who are playing baseball. And it's just, it's what these athletes, how they can influence you sometimes.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's a big culture that way. I mean, a lot of kids, they're going to follow you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, like prime example, when Junior came up, everyone wanted to hit like him.
Absolutely.
His
stance,
wiggle.
The wiggle, the swing.
It took me a while to get him over that.
Well, looking back, I wanted to ask you this question. Was there anything you wish you knew then about taking care of your body? We talked about your knee a little bit, that you know now. Like some of the information, knowledge you have today, what would you have changed back then, if anything?
I don't think I would have changed very much because, you know, at the time that your body was what's going to carry you.
Right.
You know, so I just wanted to stay in shape, period. And, you know, the other thing about back then, the only way you can stay in shape, or they wanted you to stay in shape, with the Reds, we weren't allowed to lift weights. And you only allowed to run. So in the off season, once the off season come, I would run sprints.
Sorry, repeat that. You weren't able to lift weights.
No, we weren't allowed to lift
Just
weights.
cardiovascular.
We weren't allowed.
That's
it. Just cardio.
Wow.
That's it. We were weightlifting. In our locker room, they had a Nautilus machine.
Right.
The only time you're allowed to use the Nautilus machine if you were hurt.
Rehabbing.
Oh
my goodness.
You know, because we were not, and our general manager, Dick Wagner, if he thought you were lifting weights, they would trade you.
Whoa. That is unbelievable.
Yeah, they would trade. We had a guy named Buddy Bradford, and Buddy Bradford looked like Charles Atlas. You know, I mean, he was big.
Rocked up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And didn't take them long before they got him out of there.
Wow.
You know.
Did they think it affected your swing or your mobility, your
They think
movements?
the biggest thing was they didn't believe that you would be able to stretch.
Got it.
You know, that's what it was. They thought that would, you know, would affect, because they always want you to be real flexible when you're playing ball. You know,
Correct.
quick moves and all
Right.
that kind of stuff. So that's the way they thought
Wow.
back then.
And now, as a neuroscientist and myself, and as a provider, we know that strengthening those ligaments and tendons through lifting weights can prevent injury,
Right.
and can help preserve you in these long seasons that you're talking about to be consistent.
Yeah, but they didn't know that.
Wow.
They were not going to go through They just didn't like the idea of you got bulked up, you couldn't stretch.
Yeah. I wanted to talk to you about your son, Ken Griffey Jr., and some family struggles. I kind of wanted to move into this aspect of our talk because we all think our kids are the greatest. I think mine are the greatest. You know, I have 4 young kids, 2 sets of twins, very young, yeah, 4 and 3. And you as a grandfather, you know, my parents and her parents, they help out a lot, and they think our kids are the greatest too. But talking about your son, Ken Jr., when did you know that he was going to follow your footsteps? When did you know that he was going to be this generational superstar that he is?
I didn't know about the generational superstar, but I knew at 14, he walked up to me and he said, "Dad, I want to be a major league player."
Nice.
And that's when that's when I changed the mental outlook of how he's going to look at baseball. Because now, I told him, I said, if you want to be a major league player, you're just not going to come in here and just hit fastballs.
Right.
We're going to work on something else. So I started throwing breaking balls, change-ups, situational hitting, where he understood what he needed to do in order to hit the ball. So by the time he left New York at 14, he understood everything. So when he went back to play in his summer league, he was fine.
Yeah.
But when he asked me and said he wanted to be a major league player, that's when we changed the whole outlook of how we're going to approach him playing the game.
Man, you know what? That is such an amazing insight, because me as a young father, I want my kids to play football, right? I'm like, you know, I know what it takes to be a good football player. I can take you to the right coaches. I can give you the right drills. But if they don't come to me and say, "Daddy, I want to play this," then, you know, I sort of feel like, what am I doing? Like, what path did I make for my kids that they're not taking now? But the fact that he came to you on his own volition and said, "Dad, I want to be a major league player," then it sounds like that's when you really sunk in and said, "Okay, now I'm going to take this upon me to build you up to being the player that I know you can be."
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure he understood how to do it, because you know, they always say baseball is 98% mental.
Right.
And if you don't believe certain things, it ain't gonna happen.
Yeah.
You know, especially if you talking about hitting. Hitting was one of the toughest things you can go. I remember when I was in Little League, I struck out 15 straight times.
Wow.
And the only person I had to tell me, you got to keep on going, you got to play harder, you got to develop, was my mom. And moms are that way.
They are.
And she was an athlete herself. So,
Yeah.
And then after she had calmed me down and everything, next time up I got a hit.
Were there unique pressures or fears that you felt when you were watching your son rise through the sport?
No.
No.
All I knew was that he can handle it.
Right.
because I made sure mentally that anything that comes through, he can deal with it, especially if it's out on the field.
Yeah.
The only time I really found out that he was that good is when I played with him. And he told me, he said,
And that was in
"Dad,"
Seattle, right?
it was in Seattle.
Yeah.
And he told me, he said, "Dad, you just stand right there in the 3 square feet and don't move. I got the rest." I said, "What?" I told him, I can play a little bit.
Yeah.
He said, no, Dad, 3 square feet, that's
it.
all you got.
That's all you got.
Until he ran in front of me
Oh, man.
and caught that ball in
We were
front of me.
talking about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you grounded him.
Grounded him, took
Yeah.
his car keys. I couldn't drive his car though. he had that Maserati. I couldn't even get in it.
Oh, man. Oh, boy. That's amazing.
But that's when I really found out he was a player.
Yeah.
You know?
So there's been public discussion about your son's struggles with mental health as a teenager. How did you navigate those moments as a father and as someone from an era when maybe those topics of mental health weren't talked about as openly as they are now?
Well, the biggest thing about that time was that, being I was on the road a lot, because we went on road trips. We was gone for 2 weeks sometimes.
Yeah.
And I had no idea that he was going through this change until he was in the hospital.
Yeah.
And I was asking, I said, "What's the problem?" I said, what are the pressures you're putting on yourself? And he looked at me, he said, "Dad, I'm just trying to do things, I'm trying to do it too hard. I'm trying to get something done that I can't do." I said, "Well, the biggest thing was relax. Don't let everything beat you up, and just make sure you go one day at a time. You're not always going to do the right things,
Yeah.
but you got to make sure that they're right for you." And his mom, she was the one that was real, because she was with him all the time, and she was the one that was really on him. So she stayed on him, and then after he went through that week, I think he was in the hospital and stuff. After that, she stayed on him. She made sure he was doing what he was supposed to do.
Yeah.
And mentally was the biggest thing for me. I just try to keep his head clear from everything mentally.
It's so important as a father, as a leader of your family. Mental health, especially in our community, the Black
Yeah.
community, it's something that's stigmatized
Oh,
or
yeah.
sometimes dismissed. Hey, get over it. Or, you got harder or more important struggles to think about than what's happening to your anxiety or depression or whatever other psychiatric issue may be happening. And so the fact that you and his mother did not demean what he was going through, and you made it real and authentic,
Yeah.
that's a huge thing for young people.
Well, that was the important thing. I didn't want him to start thinking he had to do a lot of stuff.
Right.
It was the same thing. He knew he wanted to play baseball, he wanted to get to the major thing. I said, "Don't think that you got to get there.
Yeah.
We're going to work on it gradually and see how things work out. But mentally, I want you to be straight. I want you to be able to enjoy yourself and your life."
So I wanted to ask what advice that you have for younger athletes today, your grandkids, your kids are in your grandkids' generation, about caring for their mind and body over the long haul. What's something that you would give them?
Oh, the biggest thing is just be consistent about what you need to do to stay in shape.
Right.
How your body's built compared to somebody else's body. You may not be in the same situation on how to get in shape. So that would be the best way to look at it as a young kid. What's best for you and how to go about doing it to keep yourself in a good mental and physical condition.
And then you've been open about your own experience with prostate cancer. We started the show talking a little bit about prostate, but I wanted to kind of dive into that because a lot of people deal with it, a lot of men, a lot of Black men deal with it, and it's something that is pervasive in our community, but really important. So can you walk us through how you first found out that you were diagnosed and what your reaction was at that time?
Well, I first found out, through physicals. Every year we had a physical. And like I said, my mom had lost her brothers and stuff, and she'd always remind us, make sure, and later, that you make sure you get that check, your PSA.
Yeah.
So every year, when I got 35, 40, I start, getting it checked. Mm-hmm. And then I went to the doctors, and I think I was 55. And that's when I found out that they said I might have prostate cancer. So I went
Not to cut you off, so you weren't averse to going to physicals and seeing doctors and getting yourself checked up.
Yeah, I was always doing
You were
that.
routinely going
yeah,
to.
I
Okay,
was
that's
always
great.
doing that.
Excellent.
I mean, that was food, because I was still in baseball.
Gotcha.
And I was coaching, and you had to go, as a coach, you had to go get a physical.
Oh.
As a scout, I was scouted, coached, managed. Every year you had to do the same thing.
Okay,
So up
gotcha.
until, up until I was 43, 44,
Okay.
I was getting physicals, you know. And then when I got older, I started doing the same thing. I'd go see a doctor.
Yeah.
And I always had that PSA checked,
Gotcha.
you know. So that's when I found out that I had prostate cancer. But
Yeah.
I went to Johns Hopkins, went to Detroit, Florida, Pittsburgh, Philly, all over the country, trying to make sure that this is what they had said I had, was prostate cancer.
So you were getting second, third, fourth, and fifth opinions.
I was going through it.
Yeah.
You know, I was going through it.
Were you reluctant to accept the diagnosis?
No, I wasn't reluctant. It was just that I wanted to make sure.
Yeah.
And the only way, I went to one doctor and said, well, the only way we're going to find out, we got to do biopsies.
Biopsy. Yeah.
First time they did the biopsy, it took 11 specimens.
Wow.
And they said, well, we're still not sure. So I had to wait 4 months, 4 or 5 months after that. And they took 22.
Wow.
And when they got that, they said, yeah, you have it.
Yeah.
So it wasn't that far afterwards, I was thinking about getting that surgery.
Yeah.
As I'm thinking about it, that cancer word does not sit well
No.
from anybody.
I just want to say, from a provider to a patient, you know, I do appreciate, one, the acceptance of the diagnosis, and two, the initiative that you took to say, you know what, I want to make sure this is real. I need you to make sure it's real by getting this biopsy and solidifying in pathology that this is what you say it is, and then going forward with the treatment. Because I think it's very simple or easy to say, I don't have it, I'm just going to put out my mind, I'm not going to go get the surgery. You know, I'm not scared of the C word. I'm kind of scared of it, but if I don't think about it, maybe it won't affect me. But the fact that you took it upon yourself to continue to advance your care forward, that's a big thing. And it's not, as I'm saying it sounds kind of simple, but it's not as easy for some people, especially older men, especially older black men, to accept that we need to take full control of our health care.
Yeah.
Great work. I want to give you your kudos, give you your flowers while you're here. A lot of men, especially in sports, see things like regular checkups. That's why I was talking to you about being averse to going to see a doctor, the physicals and checkups that you were getting. They might see that as being unmanly. Like, you know, it's not macho of me to go and be submissive to a process where a doctor tells me what to do or what I'm doing wrong. Why do you think that stigma exists?
To be honest with you, I don't know. It's just hard-headedness.
Yeah.
You know, I got an older brother that way. You know, Bill will not go see a doctor. He does not like doctors. And we almost got to twist his arm to get him to go see a doctor to make sure he's okay.
Yeah.
And he's the only one. He's hard-headed, and he's so, you know, tough that I don't think cancer or anything else would even be around him.
Cancer doesn't want to be around him.
You know, so,
Yeah.
you know, that's the difference. My younger brother had prostate cancer. He had surgery, so he's fine. I had to walk him through it. He just was afraid to see the doctor. It got nothing to do with it. Go see your health. Get your health straightened out first.
Yeah.
And then figure out what you want to do. But if you don't have your health, ain't no sense in worrying about it anyway.
That's right. That's right. And now, you know, the fact that you've mentioned that prostate cancer is a part of your life, your family's life, the next generation that's coming up, your grandkids and the ones that come after them, your great-grandkids.
We're all over them.
Got to be all over it. Absolutely.
We're all over 'em.
Absolutely.
You know, especially because we got more boys than girls. So I got to definitely talk. I talked to Trey, and he's out in Arizona right now. He's with the Cardinals.
Right.
And I'll talk to him a little bit about it, and he'll look at me and say, Grandpa, I don't need that right now. I say, okay.
Yeah.
I said, hope you don't ever need it.
True.
You know?
True.
So,
True.
but I let him know. I talk to him, all of them, you know.
That's fantastic. Good, awesome. Well, Mr. Griffey Sr., I appreciate you. This has been a great conversation, very revelatory for me personally, to understand some of the things that you went through, that you've done, and how you've made it through this cancer diagnosis on the other side, doing well, being able to live a life of fulfillment and purpose still, and raising the family that you have. You've done a great job.
Thank
Yes,
you.
sir. Yes,
My
sir.
pleasure.
Absolutely.
My pleasure.